Hey, good evening. Hope you're having a good Sunday. We are heading into a supermoon tonight. And there's what it looked like last night. And the moon is only about 80 kilometers away from actually being that supermoon. It's still closing in on the perigee distance where it's closest to the Earth. And let's see here. I thought I had some graphics up. Let me see if I can bring those up. Give me just a second here. So take just a second. Okay. There we go. Okay, I've got a, I don't know if how many of you have checked out Wolfram Alpha, but it's a very good mathematics site, and you can do all kinds of computations here. And what I've done here is the lunar distance. And what you notice here on the left, this is a distance in thousands of miles. So the lunar distance, you can see during the month of November here, going into December, it ranges from about 225 all the way up to 255. So it's going back and forth. So in a way, the supermoon thing's kind of a little bit overblown. Usually when we have like the full moon and the moon itself kind of combine, that's when it becomes pretty impressive, and that's what we have at the bottom of the graph right there. So we're at not only the full moon, but also the minimum lunar distance, and that's about 222,000 miles. So over the next 7 hours, we're getting to the bottom of that trough there, and it's only getting about 80 kilometers closer there. All right, so let's head into the weather maps. Starting to get a little bit busy out to the west. We've got that big upper level trough starting to show up. This is the 500 millibar trough. There it is, located right there. And the trough axis runs from about Idaho down to Nevada and California. And then the isobars. That's these black lines right here, painting out a bit of ridging there in Nevada. So there's a bit of cold air coming in from the Pacific Northwest, and we also have troughing out ahead of that ridge. There's the troughing. So we've definitely got a cold front working its way through the Great Basin area. And that looks to be approximately where that cold front is. So it's coming up towards Grand Junction, coming through almost to about Grand Canyon right there. And it looks like it's probably just north of Vegas still. So I guess we're going to correct that and maybe do something like that right there. So the cold front has definitely cleared much of eastern and northern Nevada, and even northern and central California there. And then we do have a warm front segment further out to the east. The cold front segment is, of course, back across the Rockies. The warm front, that's probably going to be somewhat back in here through South Dakota into Minnesota there. And let's see if we can pinpoint that a little bit better. And I think we may have to bring that a little bit further south, because I can see we've got 17 to 20 right there, and we go just north of there and we get down into the lower teens. So I think I'm going to place that warm front perhaps somewhat like that. In fact, we could even keep it close to the I-70 corridor like that right there. Because you can see we've got that 11 there at Goodland, 11 north of Russell there, and cooler temperatures there in Nebraska. So maybe we need to bring that kind of like that right there. Okay, so that is our frontal system, and let's head out to our thickness chart and see what that shows here. Definitely see some weather going on there in Nevada. So that's that cold front pushing through the Great Basin area. And there's our warm front. So, yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. And then a lot of the colder air coming into the Pacific Northwest there, in from Alberta, British Columbia, southward into Washington and Oregon. And quite a bit of showery precip across the Grand Tetons and the Northern Rockies right there in Montana and Idaho. Further out to the east, it's pretty quiet, and we're underneath a very large high-pressure system. Extends all the way from Newfoundland and Labrador all the way down to the Gulf Coast there. So this is a very large high-pressure area. And this has kept things pretty quiet across the central and eastern U.S. Here's a very interesting graphic. This shows the origin of air masses 48 hours ago. So this is a 48-hour trajectory, basically. So, for example, at Dallas-Fort Worth right here, 48 hours ago, the air mass down at the surface was near Houston. So there's been a much larger movement of air masses across the Pacific Northwest, and also, surprisingly, down in the Gulf of Mexico. The source of Miami's air has been hundreds of miles offshore there. So around the periphery of this high-pressure area here, there's quite a bit of motion along that southern and western side there. So things pretty active there in the northwest and also around the periphery of that high. But in that high, it's been very stagnant. And that's one thing that helps bring together pollutants. And when the air mass is moving very, very slowly, you tend to get accumulation of nitrates and sulfates in the air. Whereas out in the western U.S., not that they really have a pollution problem out there, but any pollution that does happen, it tends to get carried very quickly from west to east there. So we don't have quite that pattern across the eastern U.S., but if we did, that would clear things out pretty quickly there. And also we have the high plains starting to get active there in advance of the height falls out to the west. So pretty strong flow picking up across that region there. Okay, let's head to the satellite picture. So there's the water vapor imagery there, and you can see the system here coming out of Arizona in the southwestern U.S. So this is okay. This is old data. Sorry about that. I figured something looked a little bit weird there. Let me see if I can fix that. Okay, 6 micrometers, that's water vapor, so we're going to go to this one here and load up our infrared imagery. Okay, I'm going to have to switch out to one of these other products here. I guess they're having some problems on their web page, so let's take a look at Goes West. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so there's our imagery there, and we can see our system moving through the central and northern Rockies right there. Mostly an upper level and mid-level system. But that front, located from northeastern Utah down to central California, and one thing that you might be able to see here is the colder air mass across Nevada and Idaho. See how the shading in here is very white. So there's some cold air being detected by this infrared imagery. And maybe we can bring that out by choosing a different enhancement scheme. Yeah, we'll try this one here. And this does show some of the cooler air. You can see how we've got shades of light green across Nevada, which compares pretty well to what we have there in British Columbia. So we can kind of use that beneath the clouds as kind of an isotherm. And this is showing some of that troughing we have there across that part of the country. All right, so, wow, quite a storm there in the Gulf of Alaska. All right, let me take a look at the chat here. Okay, we've got Kathy Campbell-Wallace here, early instead of late. Lexi Pink, Pinkson Walsh joining us, and David Moore reporting a warm day in the Metroplex, low-level moisture coming up from the Gulf. Jeff Krob from WindGrids, lurking from work. And, yeah, he's, some of you may be familiar with WindGrids, which we bring up from time to time, about every week or two. And he is the author of that, so we'll probably bring up some WindGrids in the next few days here. Ryan Toomey's there in Florida, reporting South Florida there is cool and clear. David Holcomb and Electric Dog, Burl H, and Fun with Tech. Kathy Campbell-Wallace reporting Wyoming cold. Snow in places, cloudy and cold in the Bighorn. And we got Fred Reamer also with us, awaiting the blizzard tomorrow. Sarah Wood reporting a beautiful weekend in northern Indiana. Sue M. also in Indiana joining us, and Carl Berghoff. Burl H. reporting GOES 16 is out to around December 14th. Okay. Drifting to its permanent GOES East position. Andrew Hotchkiss also with us, and Sarah Wood reporting she ordered the new book. I appreciate that, and we're trying to get that out as soon as possible. And Megan John reporting 45 degrees there in Minnesota, super mild, with a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow and a snowstorm. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the charts and see what's coming up. This is probably a good day to look at the mesoscale charts. And that's these frames right here. Let me get this centered. So this is going to be the current chart here, and you can see in Wyoming, we've got southwest winds in advance of this next system. And we know that that's going to be aligned roughly from western Wyoming down through Utah. So let's watch as that comes through the Rockies. There we can see the winds coming around to the west, and a lot of cold air coming in through Wyoming. So we're looking at the overnight hours. This is going to be about midnight, and quite a cold blast coming in. And it looks like that front should advance pretty rapidly into Colorado and into the Four Corners area right there. Bring that even further forward, and then we get up to about dawn here. So already by dawn we've got brisk northwesterly winds, and you can see purple showing up in the higher terrain of Colorado and Wyoming. And that's indicative of the steeper lapse rates in that region. You remember that we had that trough across the western U.S., and with that trough we have pretty unstable conditions. And one of the best reflections of that is the steep lapse rates. The purple here showing temperatures in the single digits. And you can see earlier today, temperatures were only about 32 there, so quite a drop-off in that higher terrain there. Okay, then during the day, let's see here, the front emerges out into the high plains. December 4th, Monday, going through the day. Yeah, you can see the blustery northwest winds coming into the central plains there. Low pressure there in Minnesota. I don't know whether that's showing up. Let me take a look over here. Yeah, that is showing up. So there's that low right there in Minnesota. Tomorrow midday. And then continuing through the rest of the period, here's about, let's see, here's tomorrow's weathercast. The freeze line running from Minneapolis down through Omaha, down to Dodge City and Trinidad, and down to Santa Fe. And then for tomorrow night, freeze line continues advancing southeastward. And then by dawn, we're looking at the freeze line from about St. Louis to about Wichita and down to Amarillo. And this is not even the coldest night. That's going to come when we actually have the high pressure area itself emerge out into the plains. And man, look at those cold temperatures there in the higher terrain. That's temperatures getting close to below zero. And then we get to the end. And let's take that down into Texas and see what's going on. This is the overnight hours here, showing just southerly flow through Texas. Then by dawn, it's going to be looking like this. Cold front emerging up to the north there. And then during the day, you can see that cold front pushing into Oklahoma, into the Texas Panhandle, and then by evening, that's the picture we're looking at right there. Cold front from just west of St. Louis through Fort Smith, almost to Dallas-Fort Worth, and to just south of Lubbock there. And then by morning, we're going to see that front all the way from, looks like northern Mississippi through East Texas, and then almost all the way to San Antonio. And with that strong southerly flow, we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on the possibility for showers along this front. Okay, elsewhere around the country, let's check out the eastern U.S., or the west. Let's go out west to California. Okay, at this time, we know that cold front is coming through almost all the way to Southern California, so somewhere right around Mojave, Edwards, Bakersfield, somewhere in there. You can see in the San Joaquin Valley we have northwesterly flow, and that's a good indicator that the cold front has passed through that area. But down to the south, Vegas, you can see there they've got southwesterly flow. So the front is in between those two areas there. So let's see what happens overnight. Let's see if we can pick up on that front. It doesn't look like the flow turns around to the north there in Vegas. And I can see in the Mojave Desert around Baker, right there, flow coming around to the north. And then you can see it working down the Colorado River Basin right there. So it looks like here, now we're starting to see the cold air coming into central California. So this is the overnight hours, and then by dawn, it looks like our front is all the way to the Four Corners and down to Phoenix and down to Yuma. And you can see just how cold it is out in the Great Basin area. Zeros in the mountaintops and down in the valleys. Looks like about 20 to 25 degrees. And then during the day, it's mostly going to be dominated by high pressure at big Great Basin high. And of course, the main cold front will be well out to the east there. Okay, let's take a look out to the west, or to the east. I'm getting my east and west mixed up here. Okay, I don't have a Midwest sector ready. Let me see if I can bring that up. Okay, hopefully this doesn't kill our bandwidth, but I've got the Midwest sector loading. And there's the current frame, and we can see that across much of the Midwest, we've got south to southeast winds. And of course, the first change that we're going to look at is the approach of that front and the low pressure area. And there it goes during the day, moving into Minnesota. This is going to be about 3 p.m., 2 to 3 p.m. Front from about Minneapolis down through Des Moines, down to Kansas City. In a very rapid eastward progression all the way to Chicago by 10 p.m. And that should be heading into Indiana about midnight. And yeah, that will be moving up into Wisconsin tomorrow night too, about the time we do this webcast. And behind, there's that cold air coming in into Minnesota there. So anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap that up on the GFS in just a few minutes. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of soundings and check out what's happening out to the west. Okay, I got 40 frames up, and there we go. Okay. Sometimes it's hard to keep up on all these tabs. All right, so I'm going to set this for the 4th at 0Z, which was about 2 hours ago. And let's take a look at a couple of soundings there in Northern California, since that's going to be behind the cold front there. So we're going to take a look at Reno. And Reno definitely showing some cold air there. This is going to be the frontal inversion right there, topping out at about 14,000 foot MSL. And there's that northwest flow there, 60 knots out of the northwest. So quite a bit of cold air advection coming into that area, and up above 100 knot flow, up at about 27,000 feet. So that's quite a pretty good depth of cold air. And let's take a look at Oakland. Oakland also showing a pretty good depth of cold air. That's going to be about the top of that frontal layer. That's going to be about 10,000 foot MSL. This is some very deep cold air. And beneath that inversion, very strong north wind there in the San Francisco area. Pretty steep lapse rates, showing the very strong modification taking place there in Northern California. And maybe we can grab one more sounding here. We'll try Salt Lake City. And the profile there showing pretty humid conditions, but also very cold. The tropopause down pretty low. And I think what we have happening here is this is kind of close to the cold core. And this is showing some of the stability there, the strong instability. You can see temperatures there only a very thin layer near the surface above freezing, and up above some much cooler conditions and probably some showery snow showers and probably some layers of icing in there. And then we can take a look at Dodge City, and that's going to be out in the warm air mass. And you can see down here at the bottom of the sounding, we're showing about 23 Celsius, which is about 73 Fahrenheit. So that's very cold sounding or very warm sounding. And the tropopause is up very high. So that tropopause is all the way up at about 41,000 feet. Okay, we'll go ahead and head into the forecast. Let me bring up that GFS chart. Believe it or not, the book is still not quite done. What I've been doing is wrapping up all the chapters. It's I've just just about got it closed out, and I think it probably will be done tonight, but I'm going to have to get back to work on that. So let me go ahead and give you the forecast from the GFS. So, yeah, quite a bit of weather out in the Central Rockies, and there's that system emerging out into the South Dakota area. Moving into Minnesota, and trailing behind that is the area of snow showers, especially right there just west of Sturgis. So during the day, midday snow showers there from Pierre all the way up to Grand Forks and Fargo. And then the main low pressure area there around Minneapolis. So there's that front coming south into Oklahoma and Texas. As the system pushes eastward into the Lake Superior area, quite a bit of heavy snow there in Minnesota. So this is going to be about 6 p.m. tomorrow. And then during the nighttime, that should start wrapping into the Duluth area and possibly into Wisconsin. However, it looks like there's a dry slot working into the area right there. And then by, let's see here, midnight, yep, dry slot working all the way up into Minnesota. It looks like only in the extreme northwest where we see snow showers there. As far as out ahead of the cold front, yeah, we do get some showers developing along that front. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like that gets started around 9 to 11 p.m. So a chance of thunderstorms all the way from Chicago down to Little Rock and all the way down to East Texas. And that starts organizing and moves to the southeast. And then by dawn on Tuesday, front will be pushing into Minnesota and Louisiana. And we see out to the west, high pressure covering this entire region. And then out to the east, we have the cold air advection working into the Great Lakes and the eastern U.S. Okay, yeah, the GFS going for a little bit of snow shower there in West Texas on Wednesday night. It's developing a little bit of upslope flow in that region right there. So yeah, it looks like a little bit of a cold rain. Temperatures probably in the 40s and maybe a few 30s there in far west Texas. And yeah, it looks like the model is bringing the 540 line all the way down into South Texas there for Friday. So I think the model is going a little bit cold there for later this week. Things look pretty stormy there in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to watch for something to emerge there in Florida. So this looks to be a new baroclinic system developing there in the Gulf of Mexico on Friday, and then moving up along the coast on Friday afternoon into Friday night. A little bit of snow there for Virginia and parts of New England there. But it looks like the system will stay mostly offshore. Then let's see, we get into next week, kind of quiet, a little bit of an Alberta clipper coming southward during the week, or during the weekend. Looks very quiet out in the western U.S. there. Here comes another Alberta clipper coming in from the north on Monday the 11th. There comes another shot there, so it looks pretty cold in the Great Lakes and northeast U.S. It's a little more indeterminate in the Texas region. This one looks a little bit stronger for Friday the 15th. And this is a system we've been watching for quite a while. But as we showed you yesterday, the 300-hour range is, there's a lot of uncertainty that far out. So even though we're showing a cold 1032 millibar high with a large polar high-pressure area covering much of the central U.S., that's probably a little bit too far out to call. But as far as the large-scale pattern, it does look like will be active. Looks like some long-wave troughing off the west coast. That's probably a possibility there for the middle of the month. And, yeah, we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on that. Okay, so that's about all I got for tonight. Got to get back to work on the book, and let's see, we got Robert Continelli joined us. Also Adam Davis. And Tree Nelson also with us. I don't know if I mentioned you, but all right, very good. And Fred Raymer mentioning some videos on his YouTube channel there. Okay, so I guess that'll do it for me. Hope you all have a good evening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.